Uh,
Hey, welcome to the Backyard Professor live video shows. We are with Major George Filer, and I have my co host Robert Sheep from Custodian File. He's a good YouTuber, and we are going to discuss and talk about various experiences that Major Filer has had throughout his long, illustrious career in the Air Force, right, Major?
yes, yes.
Okay.
Can you hear me all right?
You are wearing a uniform. Tell us a little bit about that
Yeah.
uniform.
Well, this is the flight jacket I usually wore when I was flying.
Oh, nice. Very.
And I don't know. Theoretically, it doesn't burn.
We'll test it.
I came very close to testing it. We took off one time, and the tower called us and said, "You're on fire." And we had 50,000 pounds of JP4 to burn off before we could land the aircraft. So we flew around essentially on fire until we could get rid of the fuel, which also burned as it went behind us. This was in England, by the way. And we eventually landed at Sculthorpe, England, on the runway on fire, and the plane is burning pretty badly. And we jumped out of the aircraft just as two fire engines came up, sending out, the smoke like, I forget what they call that, from the engines that to put out the fire. Well, in any case, they drove by us very closely and almost hit us. Sounds funny, but we almost got killed by the fire trucks rather than the airplane blowing up, which could have happened at any time.
So we're glad you didn't get killed by either the fire or the fire truck.
Right. So that was one of my most exciting times in the
That
aircraft.
sounds like quite the adventure. Definitely. So how long were you in the Air Force?
20 years.
20 years, yeah.
Right.
And your last year was 1978?
Yes, sir.
I put 77. Sorry, I mislabeled your time on the thumbnail title. I'll change that one. But we want to give you full credit for services rendered without question. So how old does that make you now?
How old?
Yeah, how old are you now?
Yeah. I'm 89 and a half.
89 and a half. And you have been looking into the UFO phenomenon for how long?
85 years.
I mean to tell you, I'm going to make a confession. Thanks to Robert here, I just recently found your website, Filer's Files, and I'll tell you what, I am blown away at the amount of updated information you have been doing for the last several years. You just recently you post bi-weekly updates on your website, and I'll show the website. We're going to talk about some of the items on your website today, but you do a bi-weekly uppost, and your most recent one was April 15th. I mean, you're right there. You're up to date with sharing various stories of different people, different kinds of crafts, different approaches to this whole phenomenon. I am blown away at how much information you have shared, and it doesn't seem like anybody's aware of it. I don't hear anyone talking about Filer's Files. My impression I'm getting is, well, he was in the 1960s and 70s, the Filer Files, but I'm finding files from just 2 weeks ago, and they go way back, all the way back through the years. Is that you still updating those files? That's a lot of information. You are a walking encyclopedia here.
Well, I'm still, active as in the military and have a lot of military friends. I'm the director or president of the South Jersey Air Force Association, and we have a couple hundred members, and they sometimes give me information, and some of my friends have friends in the CIA, and they give me information, and I get it from a lot of different places. And of course, then we had, up until recently, for 25 years, I was the state director for MUFON, Mutual UFO Network, and interviewed a lot of abductees by aliens who talk to the aliens. They give me information that the aliens are telling them.
Yeah.
What else? Oh, I'm the Eastern Director of MUFON as well. So I have a lot of contacts that provide information. I don't know if it's all completely true. By the way, the name of the website is the National UFO Center.com.
Yes, we'll be showing that here in just a few minutes when I bring that up. Fred D says Richard Dolan always mentions Filer, so I'm going to have to pay better attention to Richard Dolan, whom I very much admire and like. He has some fabulous books. He's always a gentleman on screen. Unlike myself, when I rant and rave, it gets my audience giggling and excited, but I'm kind of a passionate, I can't, if something's dumb, I call it out. And if something's fabulous, I call it out, but yeah, this is exciting. Do you have any questions, comments, Robert, that you want to ask the Major real quick?
Yeah, Major, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your service very much. I think a lot of people would want to know, how did you get so lucky to become an official, very rare, a UFO liaison to a 4-star general? How did you even?
Well, I was assigned to intelligence in Vietnam, and sounds funny, but I was an I-Corps analyst in Vietnam. And I was the first one on stage every morning about 8 o'clock and would tell the generals what was going on, essentially in Vietnam, particularly I-Corps is the furthest north part of South Vietnam, and that was where most of the action was. And interestingly enough, made predictions that the North Vietnamese were going to attack South Vietnamese in large numbers, and put it out in a daily analyst, a daily message of what we told the generals that went to all the Air Force units and the Pentagon and the White House and so on. It sounds funny, but I was briefing every day to the generals. But General Westmoreland called my boss. General Westmoreland was the overall commander in Vietnam, and he was very angry that Captain Filer had put out in these messages that the North Vietnamese were going to attack in large numbers. And he bawled out my 4-star general, who was the Air Force general, General Momeyer, and General Momeyer bawled me out. But he did ask me, why do you feel that the North Vietnamese are going to attack? And I gave him all the reasons, radio intercepts and what our people along the Ho Chi Minh Trail were saying, and they said that there's tanks coming along the Ho Chi Minh Trail and were probably large numbers of North Vietnamese troops. So all of our Air Force units went on, essentially beefed up their outer perimeters to stop any kind of attack, even though General Westmoreland said we were all, I don't know if he used the word crazy. They called me the liberal captain, that I was foolish enough to believe that the North Vietnamese were going to attack in large numbers. And I was criticized for several days saying that. And fortunately, James Murphy, who was a 3-Corps analyst, said, I've got that similar information. Well, they put all of our bases on full alert just before the North Vietnamese attacked, and we came out pretty well for that. People don't understand that during Tet, essentially most of the South Vietnamese forces went home to their, it was like Christmas in New Orleans, all New Year's all tied together, and having a situation that they were on their home base when the North Vietnamese attacked in large numbers. And they fought very exceptionally well to stop the invasion. But even then, part of Saigon was taken, Hue was taken, large numbers of areas in Vietnam were taken. But after about 3 weeks, we had fought off the North Vietnamese, and they went back, frankly, about half went back, actually. And so it was, in a way, a victory for the American and South Vietnamese forces.
Wow.
So that probably got people's attention, and they realized, wait a minute, this guy knows what he's talking about.
Right. And one of the things that happen frequently is along the border, North Vietnamese, South Vietnamese border, and the I-Corps, we had boats going up and down the river to stop any Vietnamese coming across. And they frequently reported that there's UFOs along the border. In some cases, we believe that they were firing at the UFOs, and it's not generally known, but UFOs will usually return the fire. There's some indication that they even take our missiles or our bullets and turn them around and hit the person who fired them. And we lost several boats.
Yeah, it's pretty stupid to shoot at the superior power. I've got to confess, that's pretty stupid.
Well, and they kept on blaming our F-4s that flew out of Da Nang, and our pilots would say, we didn't shoot at them. We didn't go out over the ocean. Now, part of what happened is an Australian destroyer was struck by missiles, and they said it was the Air Force F-4s, and all the pilots, and there's a 2-man crew in F-4. Matter of fact, I was assigned F-4s, and just before I got to Vietnam, they said they wanted me in intelligence to brief the generals. And at that time, General Brown was the new 4-star commander in the Air Force, 7th Air Force. And we interviewed the pilots from Hue, from Da Nang, which is right near Hue. And they all said, we weren't over the water. It wasn't our missiles that fired at the Australians. And we thought it frankly was a UFO, but there was a big Navy research on the project, and they blamed the Air Force, which made General Brown very angry. And he eventually became the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
Wow.
People don't realize is that later on they asked me if I would become the general's briefer for the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And they showed me around the Pentagon, and I was surprised to be shown that we were in constant contact with the Soviet Union about UFOs. UFOs in large numbers would fly out of the Soviet Union into NATO, and we would think we were being attacked by the Soviets. The reverse also happened. Large numbers of UFOs would fly out of the NATO area, France and Germany, into the Soviet Union, and they thought we were being attacked by NATO. So we had to set up communications between the Soviet Union and the United States on a constant basis. So they knew when the UFOs were coming, and we knew when the UFOs were coming. And it's interesting to note that we frequently work together, you might say chasing the UFOs, even though we're, possibly going to go to war at any time with the Soviet Union.
Yeah, that's even why Reagan asked Gorbachev, hey, if the UFOs do invade, are you willing to join forces with us and help us fight them? And he said, oh, heck yeah. So all of the top brass in both of the major super world powers saw and knew about UFOs.
That's right.
So it's no secret to them that they're real. The people who have had that truth hidden from us is we public. So when someone like you comes along and says these types of stories, we public should pay attention and realize, hey, this thing is real. So what's the point of having full disclosure? It's already happened. Now we just need to individually find out for ourselves if they're real or not. That's what a lot of individual enterprises seem to be starting to do with the public people.
They're real, all right.
There you have
it. Look outside and see a car or an airplane. You can also look outside and see a UFO, particularly if you got binoculars and look up real high in the sky. They're there almost all the time.
Day and night?
Day and night. And they're big. A lot of them are very big. They had the big motherships up there. And
have you seen a mothership, Major?
Yes, I have.
How big would you have estimated it?
Well, to the visually in the sky, it looked like the size of a big commercial ship, the type that have all the passengers on. I would say, 400 or 500 yards long. Now, interestingly, I turned on our radar. I actually raised the radar so it was showing in the sky, and the radar said that it was the same size as the fourth bridge, which when I looked up the information on it, since the UFO and the bridge seemed to be the same size, that bridge was a mile long. And other pilots have seen UFOs at large, particularly around England and France and so on. I haven't seen one that large in the United States, although I've seen other UFOs in the United States.
Mile long. That's astonishing. Hey,
Well, somewhere between a large ship and a.
there's a question here from Natahan. Natahan. Hope I'm saying your name right, man. What hides the UFOs? Is there a cloaking mechanism, do you know, or is that all just speculation? What do you think, Major?
I think there is a cloaking mechanism. I don't know if all the craft have it. The great big large ones, I don't know if they have the cloaking mechanism.
Do you think we have that technology? How does a cloaking mechanism work? Do we even understand that?
Well, it's all speculation.
Yeah, it would be.
We do it by making it invisible to the radar, and by having coatings on the aircraft, or actually made out of like carbon fibers and so on, that deflect the radar from coming back. Radar hits like steel or buildings and reflects back.
Right. Interesting. So I want to go to your website real quick for just a second. I'm going to share this website. I've got someone asking me a question that I actually picked on your files to discuss today. It wasn't going to be the first discussion, but let's go to this real quick. I'm going to share the screen. Oh, hopefully, hold on. I've got this written down to which one. Okay.
National
the April
UFOcenter.com.
Yeah, I've got that. I've got the specific filers file.
And usually you can get on just by going to NUFOC. It's some of the people out in your group want to go there.
I believe this is the one. Let me look and see if it's sharing. Okay, now hold on. I'm going to go to, that one. Okay, now this is the story that I want to get to. This is the wrong one. March. Hold on. I'll get this. That's my fault. I'm going to stop the screen. I want to share it this way because the information on it is really quite astonishing. Is it this one? Hold on, I'll get it. I
don't have you on the screen, so I don't know if I have to do something to put you on the screen.
No, are you seeing your filer's file on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, that's again. Doggone it, I'm striking out here. That's the wrong one. Hold on. Be patient with me. This is worth the wait, I promise. Sorry, audience. I'm just getting used to this. There's so many of his files that I want to get to. Why is it not going to April? Dad gummit. Hold on. Maybe we'll just talk about it. But it's a very specific. It really is worth it. I promise. Hold on. Let's see if this is it. Come on, get me the right one. Okay, that's the black triangles. Earmark that. Hold on, that's not the one, but that's one I want to talk about and get your idea on about triangles, but not just yet. So it's going to be, it might be this one. March. Where is April's? I've gone through all of them. Okay, hold on. I know what I'll do. Okay, let's just, while I'm looking, let me have you talk about, while I'm looking for this so that I can get this particular one. Tell us about the idea of the moon base of the aliens on the moon. That's, I'm not going to lie to you. This, I I'm not I'm not trying to be difficult here, but I'm
Well,
skeptical. I'm skeptical about that. But
from,
then we only see one side of the moon. But tell us what you know about the aliens.
from my contacts, one was astronaut Edgar Mitchell. We were being interviewed on BBC, and he basically said, listen to what Major Filer says. He knows about this information. And then he left and had me on the TV program for a while. But basically, after the show, I went in and I said, Edgar, tell me what you saw on the moon when you were there. He's the sixth man who walked on the moon. And he said, well, I have a contract with NASA that, as do all astronauts, and they can't tell you what they saw up there. He said that, therefore, I didn't see anything. He said, but all my astronaut friends who were there told me that they saw UFOs and alien bases up on the moon. Now, the Chinese have released some pictures of what appears to be alien bases. And well, I was stationed at Langley Air Force Base, which was the big NASA bases right next to us. And I'm in Tactical Air Command Intelligence, and our intelligence people do all the reconnaissance photos, and they knew how to fix all these big machines. So NASA would ask them to go over there and fix some of their machines. And these fellows that came back said, NASA claims that there's bases and structures on the moon, and they even showed us some. I said, well, can I see any? And they said, no, that's all, of top secret stuff. But in any case, that was another reason why I feel that there's bases up there. And I was a friend of Ingo Swann. I don't know if you know Ingo Swann, but he's considered one of the...
That's who I had on right there, the remote viewer. That's what I wanted you to talk about. Ingo Swann, he's a very well-known and respected remote viewer. And he said he saw it.
He used to come to our house and stay here in New Jersey. He lived in New York City, but he would come down, and I'd usually have, another 10, 15 MUFON personnel, some of which were pilots previously in the military, but now working for, United Airlines and American Airlines and so on. But in any case, he was trying to teach us how to remote view, and a few of us got it pretty good. I was not particularly a good remote viewer. But in any case, whenever we had a situation, for example, some Navy aircraft were lost over Puerto Rico, and they had said that they had seen Santa Claus, which is a code word for UFOs, just before they disappeared.
Yeah.
Well, we would remote view Puerto Rico and see UFOs in some of the mountains and under the ocean.
Now
Also,
can I interrupt you?
Remote viewed the moon. Okay.
You're the first one whom I have talked to that has mentioned this code word Santa Claus for UFOs. And so thank you, because my oldest brother decades ago was telling me that this was a code word, and my dad told him to knock it off. Quit talking about the UFOs. That's stupid. There is no Santa Claus. There is no UFOs. And my oldest brother, he said, Dad, that was the code word between the astronauts and Central Command when they were going to the moon. They were told, don't talk about the craft that were escorting them to the moon. Call it Santa Claus. So thank you. That is important for me personally. I apologize to my audience for interrupting the major, but this is the first time I've heard a confirmation of that other than my oldest brother. And now you've got my attention. I mean, you've had my attention all along, but this is an exciting moment for me personally.
Well,
that's interesting.
Ingo Swan was actually the teacher of the other remote viewers.
Yeah, that's what your article here says on his website. You guys, for my audience, I will be putting links to these specific articles that I'm showing on Filer's Files on his website. We will put the links in the description of this video, I promise. But I just wanted to show you that this particular discussion with Ingo is April 1st this year, just 26 days ago. This is the newest information on him. So it's not like we're talking stuff in the 1970s. This is right now. So this
right,
is
well, I think is to finish the story, we remote viewed the moon. Now, one of the pilots was pretty good, as well as, of course, Ingo himself was. Indicates when they remote viewed the moon, they said there was some kind of a mine that was going after a dark mineral, either black or nearly dark. It looked something like coal, but it wasn't. They didn't think it was coal. And the aliens were digging up pretty much like we would dig up in a mine and putting it on board a UFO, a pretty big one. And the UFO, after it was loaded, took off. And as it left the crater area, it left a large amount of, whatever this is, we'll call it coal dust, on the edges of the craters. And if you look at the moon, you'll notice that there's items of dust or darkness going out from the craters. And this is where they're mining up there. And in any case,
no, go ahead.
You have a question?
Yeah, that's directly related to this. There's a gentleman who does a YouTube site that I really enjoy. He goes by the Angry Astronaut moniker, the Angry Astronaut. And he had a discussion on the moon about a month ago or so, where he said there is some discussion that the moon is actually an alien creation and it's actually hollow. And the surface part of it is 6 miles or so deep of stuff to give the impression that it's an actual moon. Have you heard anything like that they're actually on the inside of the moon? I know this sounds kooky, man. I'm telling you. I can't even believe I'm asking this question live, but it's what I've heard. And so have you heard that the moon itself is not really the moon? It's actually an entire base for aliens, and it's hollow. They exist inside it.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if they had put what the moon is there and in that position. It's in a very perfect position, almost too perfect.
That's one of the clues. Yes.
Well, in any case, I have no knowledge of the inside of the moon other than the depth of a mine or the crater, but so I can't really answer your question whether
it's all good. The actual idea that they're even mining on the moon, that there is a base on the dark side of the moon, etc. Could that be the reason or one of the reasons why we were so gung-ho about sending astronauts to the moon, and did they discover the reality of aliens using it as a base, and therefore all moon orbits, all moon missions completely stopped. I've often wondered that through the years. Why didn't we keep going there? Why didn't we explore more of it? Why didn't we use more of our information?
We should have, but I understand we were told to stay away. I don't know how actual.
You were told by who?
The aliens.
Really? I haven't heard.
I was told. I don't know if that's factual, but it's one of the problems of the whole field. I've seen UFOs, I've seen aliens and so on, but knowing exactly what they're thinking and everything is like difficult to determine, and a lot of people just make up stories. Frankly,
I know. I get it too. Well, I mean, people accuse everybody of making up. You've been accused of just making up stories,
and the abductees get stories from different aliens. Although most of the abductions are by grays, but there's often other aliens on board the craft, and some aliens will talk to the abductees, and some of their stories are different, if you know what I mean. In other words, we don't know if they're telling us the truth or not.
Right. Well, this gentleman here, TETs, I'm assuming you're a gentleman. If you're not, if you're a lady, I'm not trying to offend you, but they say, hi, I have recorded a UFO going into the moon on my channel here and called it moon base. I'll look into that, TET. That's interesting. I haven't ever heard anyone saying that, so that'll be fun for me to explore and potentially do a video response to.
I've also seen photos of what appear to be UFOs flying across the moon and landing at various places.
Uh-huh.
And, Edgar Mitchell's certainly indicated he saw them up there. And I have information from
yeah. Well, this
Bill Tompkins, who was in the command center on the Earth, who heard the discussions saying that they were seeing different things, structures and UFOs on the moon.
I gotta confess this, and I agree with what I've got a couple of comments here, and I'm not casting doubt. I'm just expressing my trepidation as well. That's probably the best word. Crash and smash. It says something to this effect. Oh no, sorry. This one. Telepathy is a hard pill to swallow. How can self-serve learn that free? The idea that they communicate with us telepathically, it just, our science has anchored itself into materialism. And so it just appears that the idea of using our minds to communicate, that's always been relegated to science fiction. Do you know, have you ever communicated with aliens telepathically, or do they talk to you, or am I out to lunch?
Well, the answer is yes.
They do.
That
it's all about your
we
brain.
have had situations where we attempted to get UFOs to come over and see us, so to speak, and 4 or 5 people get together and telepathically, let's just think about something in your mind, and the UFOs would show up. It doesn't happen every time, but it can happen.
Well, that's the claim of several UFO watchers right now. Chris Bledsoe says that. We got Jake Barber's team up there saying they're using psionics, and there's a lot of people who are uncomfortable with that. And some say, well, wait, that's a new development that we haven't heard before. And so, we're new at all of this, even though we've been going for 80 years. We as a species are probably pretty new at this idea of alien visitation. And in that regard, what do you think about the black triangles? Is that our technology, or have we developed that far? There's some who say if you see a black triangle, you're just seeing human technology, or is that legitimate alien material? What would your ideas be?
I would feel it's both alien and possibly ours.
So we couldn't verify UFOs as triangles anymore because we wouldn't know if it's us or them.
I'll tell you an interesting story about
Sure.
triangles.
Please do.
See, people don't realize, first of all, if the aliens are even here. But
True.
I believe they're here. And for example, when the Soviet Union broke up, this was like 1999, KGB colonels came to the United States and wanted to meet with me, which I did. And the KBG colonels claimed that triangle UFOs were shooting up some of their radar sites in important places in the Soviet Union. And that they also made it known that they wanted the Soviet Union essentially to break up. And said if they didn't, they would continue destroying key parts of the Soviet Union. And so the Soviet Union essentially gave up, became Russia. But people don't realize there's 15 or 16 countries that departed from the Soviet Union. It was not nearly as strong as it used to be. And one of those countries was Ukraine. And of course, Russia is trying to get it back right now.
Right.
By attacking it. So history is kind of important. The one thing that the abductees often say is that the aliens are very afraid of nuclear weapons and explosions. And
we should be more afraid.
Could destroy the earth, certainly as we know it, and kill millions of people, but it might also kill them. So they are very strong against anything to do with the UFOs or with nuclear explosions and so on. By the way, I used to load nuclear weapons, and you have to think of a nuclear weapon kind of like a baby. You don't want to drop it. You don't want to walk into a wall or anything, because the explosives inside the nuclear weapon may go off. Now, whether that would create a nuclear explosion, they say it probably wouldn't, but it would blow up the nuclear material, which would create radiation through a large area. My point is that nuclear weapons are rather sensitive.
Yeah.
And the aliens, I'm sure, have made it known to our leaders that we shouldn't use them.
Yeah. There's there's one gentleman, I can't remember who his name is. Perhaps you could help me here, Robert. He worked at Area 51 for a while. He came on YouTube and kind of spilled the beans that the people in Area 51 actually have aliens dressed up like them, and they help them with their daily routine work back and forth with things on Area 51. And aliens have been in Area 51 for decades working with us humans there. Can't remember his name. I watched one of his videos, and he's so nonchalant and rather matter of fact about it that it just takes your breath away.
No, I don't know the second gentleman. Obviously, Bob Lazar is first that comes to mind.
Yeah, Bob Lazar, but it's not him. It's someone else that was later than Lazar. And I mean, just in the 1970s and 80s. And he said there are aliens still there dressed as humans working with us. Have you heard that, Major?
Yes.
Oh.
Well, Paul Hellyer, the Secretary of Defense for Canada, and I have had similar experiences. And how it works is I was at Macy's coming down the escalator, and over in the area where they dress women and put on their makeup, there was a very attractive blonde lady. And I thought that she looked like the aliens that I had seen before. And I thought in my mind, telepathically, I bet that's an alien, probably a Nordic alien.
Nordic, yeah.
She looked over at me, and she had like 3 or 4 women that she was putting makeup on, and looked at me as I'm coming down the escalator and ran off to the outside of the company. When I got off the escalator, I ran after her and ran outside, but I couldn't find her to talk to her. But Paul Hellyer, I told him that story, and he said he had a similar story like that in Las Vegas. And those ladies were in, nun outfits, the black nun outfits, and well, most nuns don't see what you see are, you might say, average-looking people, but these were exceptionally beautiful people.
Yeah.
And
the Nordics, anyway. Yeah.
Right. Probably.
We were saying that yesterday in our informal talk, that there are
right.
aliens among us, and
they're working, from what I understand, and inside certain companies, usually aviation or medical, and at least in Israel, they came out and talked about it. At least high-ranking people have said that in their medical facilities, and they're helping us a lot, allegedly.
Yeah. Hey, I'm not trying to hog all the questions in time, Robert. If you want to jump in. I do have one more thing I would like to get the Major's opinion on.
Maybe just make a couple of footnotes. I know what the Major's talking about, these aliens being highly attractive. About 15 years ago, I was here in Marina del Rey at the soup plantation. I was with my wife, and for the first time in my life, this couple came in, roughly 25 years old, male and female, and I got to tell you, they were genetically perfect. They really stood out, and we were staring at them. They were just perfect. They sat down next to us, and I can even tell you, I mean, I was just looking at them. They were just perfect, genetically even their hair looked like their strands were inputted one at a time. Highly unusual. That's only happened one time in my life. So I didn't know about the telepathic trick. I would have tried to communicate with them.
Brave man.
I do recommend, if you ever see anyone exceptionally out of place, try to telepathically communicate. And then also, you were talking about telepathy earlier, and this is a separate show, but by some impossible coincidence, I was very good friends with the gentleman. His name is Glenn Falkenstein. If you look him up, they call him a magician. Had nothing to do with magic. He was the real deal. He was a telepath, mentalist, and time traveler. And like I said, that's a show in itself. But he briefly said telepathy will be very common in the year 2037. So we have about 12 more years. It looks like, if I had to guess, we're probably talking about, what do we have, 5G, 6G? We're probably talking about 8G, and there'll be an app. So there'll probably be a telepathic app available in 12 years. So I get it. If some of you are like, no, telepathy is impossible, it's not real, there's no proof. I could tell you, I knew this gentleman for 25 years. He was world famous. There is nobody in his category. So telepathy is very real, which you already know. And 12 years from now, so it'll be a slow process, but I think a lot of us have already experienced that we casually have thoughts, and then the next day there's pop-up ads at these random thoughts we have. So I think telepathy has already started via the internet, AI. I think they're accidentally invented telepathy because it's too coincidental. You could think of something extremely random, and you don't even have to say it out loud. Like, I want to go to Tahiti, and then tomorrow you'll have a pop-up ad of trips to Tahiti. And so I think it's already started. It's coming our way. This gentleman, Glenn, was also in the Air Force, 1948, 1952. Boy, Major Filer, boy, you would have really, really loved to talk to this guy. And he was a code breaker in the Iceland Air Force, 48 to 52. And needless to say, every single code that ever came across his desk was decoded in a matter of seconds. So I don't know, Major Filer, by some chance, did you ever hear of any kind of chatter that a lot of the Russian and Chinese codes were deciphered very quickly in the early 50s, and we don't know why? That would have been super top secret, but yeah, anything about Iceland, codes being deciphered, Iceland?
Nothing like that, but I did get information that you could imply that it was decoded, but I don't know for certain.
Oh, that's
the remote viewers, used to go into the headquarters of the Russians and so on, and allegedly pick up what they were saying.
Right.
There's also, different kinds of secret hearing devices, etc. Now, I will say telepathically, my wife pretty knows what I think, and I pretty much know what she thinks, but we've been married 68 years, so...
Congratulations.
My wife periodically says the same thing about me. She'll be able to tell what mood I'm in and if I've had a good day or a bad day and all that. And so she kind of, we've been married for 36 years. Oh boy, I hope I've got that year right. 36 or 37. So we've gotten to know each other pretty good. But let me ask you another quick question that has to do with telepathy in a way, but someone earlier mentioned in the comments, and this is a subject I do want to get, about the dog whistle being able to call in the aliens so that we can communicate with them. And Casper Site, there's another YouTuber called Casper Site. He's a Brit, and he's full of enthusiasm. He's fun to watch. He's a good guy. I like him a lot. He actually said that the gigahertz, if I recall this right, I'm willing to be corrected, 5.28 gigahertz is one of the frequencies, if you can broadcast that calls the alien ships in. Have you heard? I've heard, or I've read sometimes that it's 6.1 gigahertz. Have you heard about that, Major? There's frequencies that we can utilize that they are specifically attuned to, that we can communicate better with them. Have you heard anything like that?
I've heard it, but I don't have a broadcast system.
I don't either, but I'm going to get one, because Casper Site says there's a lot of people who are now beginning to say, hey, 5.28 gigahertz, that works. Now, someone told me, Nate, my buddy that I went UFO hunting with yesterday, the wind was way too bad. It completely ruined my video. Darn it. Made me mad. But he said that there is an app. You can get it on YouTube, I think. YouTube will tell you, will sound off what 5.28 gigahertz sounds like. I'm going to look into that and try that just for kicks and giggles. So I'm just saying, if this stuff is real and we are skeptical, we are being given the keys, the ideas, the chance to try it ourselves instead of relying on someone else's experience. And I mean, there's people who say, yeah, well, none of this is proof yet. Well, I mean, what kind of proof are you going to accept? If I show you a crystal clear, in fact, let me do this as an experiment with my audience, if I could, real quick, Major. I know we came to hear you, but, and this is on your filer files, so this is very important. I want to show this, because what is considered evidence? How do we say yes to evidence? Hold on. I hope I got the right one. How do we say yes to evidence? Nope, it figures. I got the right one again. When we argue against evidence all the time, what do we consider to be good, valid evidence? And when is it considered? Is this it? Hold on, I'm looking. No.
Well, in a court of law, one person or two persons can say, that's the fellow that did the crime. And on my files, almost every file, by the way, it was once a week for the first 20 years, every file has a different person claiming that UFOs are real. And most of them are very important people, generals, admirals, astronauts,
sure,
cosmonauts, secretaries of defense, undersecretary of defense, CIA heads, and so on. In other words, the evidence is amazing if you start checking it. And you have, presidents as well, Carter and Reagan and
yeah.
And
but the argument is all of these are just stories of important people. That's not proof. Now, this photograph on your filer's files is said to have been shot over the United Kingdom. Now, let me ask the skeptics, why aren't you accepting this as evidence? And I guarantee you, I know what the answer is going to be. It's too clear. It's too close. It's too straight on, and it's CGI. That picture is fake. But that picture is actually real. So why are we dismissing it? Now, let me scroll down here. Which is more real, this photograph or this photograph right here? That's a cylinder taken over Peru from a military helicopter. Why is this one less real or more real than the other one? Or are they both fake? Because is this fake because it's too fuzzy and it's not realistic? Or is this fake because it's too clear? So my question is, what is proof? Where is the proof? Is it in the stories of experiences like yours? Is it in photographs? Is it in videos? Or are some people just never going to accept anything shown or said to them? In which case, my argument is, then you have to go get it yourself. Quit waiting on everybody else. There's a lot of disgruntled people right now saying, we've been waiting 50 years for disclosure. Why are you waiting? We now know how to call them. You do a certain frequency, 6.1 gigahertz or 5.28 or whatever, or you do a meditation, the CE5 protocols of Steve Greer, whom everyone calls a grifter and they hate him. But there's witnesses who say, you may hate him, but CE5 works. So this is an interesting conundrum we're in. And here you are presenting all of your astonishing military credentials with your access to generals and UFOs. And there are people saying they don't believe this. So how do we work this?
Well, one thing, when I first got out of the Air Force, I was friendly with a number of flight surgeons, which are medical doctors, but they have the ability to go up an aircraft. Well, in any case, I'd interview an abductee, one, for example, named John Thompson, and I asked him to come over and interview him. I said that I think he's got a true story. He essentially said that he's in his bedroom and he doesn't know why, but he woke up, looked outside, and a UFO, a disc about 25 feet in diameter, landed, and two alien grays got out and came over to his window, walked through the window, and picked him up. Now, his wife was like asleep or out completely. She didn't know this happened. They grabbed him. He's about 6'4". He's in charge of security at one of the hospitals in Philadelphia. They grab him and they take him into the UFO, and they pick up something like a pencil and they cut him under the left arm to the right arm across his chest, and they look inside his chest at various places to find something. Whatever they're looking for wasn't there. They take the pin-like thing and close his chest. But now he's got a big scar across his chest. So I invite the two flight surgeons in, and they look at him and they said, we've seen scars across people's chests, particularly up and down for cardiology, heart operations, but we've never seen one go across the chest horizontally from side to side. And they were convinced that whoever did that, like a week before, was pretty amazing, that it could close the scar and it was already starting to heal, indicating that they had advanced medicine just the fact that they had cut this fellow from side to side was amazing in itself. They can't think of any reason why. And it was a nice, clean scar.
Yeah, interesting. Hey, my friend Robert Nunnally asks you a question. Does the Major know anything about alien wars? I'm guessing, Robert, that you mean aliens against aliens, or do you mean alien wars against humans? I think he means aliens again. Do you know anything about alien wars?
I know that once every couple of months we get people saying, I saw 2 UFOs and they seem to be shooting some between them. And it seems to be something they can see. It's like light going between the craft, which would indicate some are at war with each other. And I'm told that the ones that are at war with us are reptilian. Now, how strong the reptilians are, they look more like alligators or something.
The reptilian aliens?
Yeah, I've never actually seen one, but that's what I was told. That there might be a war between them and some other ones. And I have people who tell me that they've been up in the UFOs and that we're shooting at them. In other words, the United States,
right,
and other countries are shooting at them, and they say, please tell them to stop.
That's insanely short-sighted. That's just
nuts.
that's like grabbing a 6-foot spear with a flint tip that's 1 inch large and running up to an African rhinoceros and start stabbing it, thinking you're going to fight that rhinoceros. Good luck.
And I've had
that's ridiculous.
I've had people face to face tell me, and they're military, Marines and the like, that they've seen the crashed aircraft with holes and stuff in the side.
Interesting.
That had been shot down probably with a Patriot missile or.
Interesting. So they might have superior technology, but we can still fight. I don't know why we don't try to make friends with them. The best way to defeat your enemy is make them your friends. It's our war mind is so silly sometimes.
Well, I think we're friends with some. That's my opinion. We're friendly with some aliens,
not with others. Yeah,
not with others.
Yeah. Hey, my friend Philippe Pazzello. Oh, sorry, Robert. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead, answer that. But I wanted to. The Major talked about sitting down with the KGB. So, Major, if you could tell us after this question, as I understand, the CIA was very curious why you were sitting down with the KGB and they spoke with you.
Go ahead and answer that. This is fascinating. Yeah, please.
Well, I've talked with the CIA people who try to convince me that UFOs and all that, aliens, etc., do not exist. It was all imagination. And I said, well, I chased them in airplanes and seen them while I'm sitting on the beach and etc., that I know that they're real. And seen them at very close range. And they said, well, if you're going to be like that, be very, very popular, you'll be safer that way.
So they basically were trying to ask you to stop talking about UFOs.
Right.
Yeah.
And I said I wasn't going to. I had dinner with him.
I'm kind of curious, after that conversation, did they ever reach back out to you, or was it at this point, we don't know you anymore? How was future communications after that?
Well, before I was the state director of MUFON, the previous state director was also in the military, and he had a number of CIA friends that he talked to almost every day, but he did not want me to talk to them every day. And he would call me and tell me what they said about various things.
Okay.
In other words, I didn't have direct contact after that. Well, I did. I know that they were reading my website. And I know that Mrs. Clinton was reading my website and other important people on TV and stuff read it.
But after that sit down and they told you to stop talking about it, they did not reach back out to you anymore after that?
Right. Not directly.
Okay.
Once in a while they say, oh, you're right on. Or I question that story,
Okay.
They would criticize me, let's put it that way.
Okay, of course. Of course.
But see, what they believe isn't necessarily what I believe. It's what, everybody's who's interested in this field is collecting information. And some of it is good and some of it isn't.
Major.
I try to talk to abductees who talk to the aliens who and I ask them to tell them things. Now, one interesting thing is, this is an abductee story, but I had an abductee who lived in the center part of New Jersey, and another one who lived in the north part of New Jersey. And one day, the center fellow lived in the center part of New Jersey called me and said I was taken underground, very much like the movie Star Wars, and there was all these funny-looking aliens down there. And we're sitting at the bar, and it's like 11:30, and they said, you can't drink until 12 midnight. So at 12 midnight, I got a drink. And then later on, they brought me back. Now, an hour later, I got a call from the fellow in the north part of New Jersey, and he told me the same story. And I said, does that mean that at least some of the abductions are like fantastic dreams? That they're not necessarily taken out of their bedroom, although some are. And I've had people driving their cars who claim that they've been taken and, come to my house. Another interesting thing is that most of the abductees are very good looking themselves. Like in New Jersey, if you go to Walmart or any store, almost anywhere, you're not likely to see very attractive people. But all the abductees, male and female, were always what I consider attractive people.
Interesting.
Okay, Major, let me ask a very basic question. Okay, trying to understand this from the other guy's point of view, a steel man's position. Why? If you could sit down with the Pentagon, if you could sit down with the CIA, why are UFOs top secret? Explain to me why we should not talk about them.
Because I think President Truman or a president, could have been Roosevelt, but back then, World War II time, made it the most secret item, the most top secret item in the government.
Okay.
For example, I used to brief generals every day. I would brief UFOs every day, but once a month or whatever, and I'd have four screens in front of the briefing, and I had to keep four screens filled, so I needed a lot of slides. So I went to the Pentagon, and I got like 1,000 slides, and I can remember that I got the latest picture of the T-72 tank, which was the newest tank at that time, and the SR-71 anyway, Foxbat, one of the latest Russian aircraft. It was just experimental. And a whole bunch of top secret slides. And I said, well, I need a couple UFO slides because every so often I brief the UFO slides to General Canton. And there's about 10 generals, but 3 and 2-star and 1-stars in the command. And they said, well, we got plenty of UFO pictures and video and gun camera film and everything. He said, we got a big vault through, but you can't have it. And I said, well, I've got the highest top secret clearances and special access to a bunch of programs and everything. They said, go back and ask General Canton if you could have these pictures. He said it takes a 4-star general to release any information on UFOs. Wow. So I went back to Scott Air Force Base and wrote a letter for General Canton to sign that I had the clearance and the need to have these slides for the picture. In any case, I turned it over to my boss, who was Colonel Dugan, and Colonel Dugan ripped up my letter, and he said, don't you know that Bob Woods, your immediate boss, is the UFO officer for Scott Air Force Base, and he can launch airplanes to chase them or do anything there is with UFOs, and he can get you some UFO pictures. So I didn't get inside the vault at the Pentagon. And I didn't really get the clearance. Although my boss used to talk about UFOs, he had to go out and investigate UFO sightings or landings in the area.
You're talking about Bob Wood?
Bob Wood, yeah.
Yeah. He's famous too. Yeah. So what do you know about the Arcturians? Have you heard about the Arcturians? Do you know much? Have you had any experience with them? One of my listeners want to know about Arcturians. He said his father has been calling them for several years now.
Well, some people are in contact with them. I'm not. I don't know much about them specifically. Right. Or at least anybody who called themselves Arcturians. Now, one of the problems is that the aliens have a bunch of different names for everything than what we have for the same people, you might say. They're the same aliens. And a lot of their names are difficult to pronounce and everything.
Major, I think it's important, probably one of the most amazing encounters you had, and it's never been really reported on the internet. was the day that you accidentally showed up to military base and they wouldn't let you in because the base was shut down because they had shot an alien and he was lying dead in the runway. Can you revisit and tell us?
I was on the base.
In which base was that again?
McGuire Air Force Base.
And can you pretty much explain to us the whole story to the best of your knowledge?
Well, I used to brief General Sadler at 21st Air Force at McGuire Air Force Base. And to do the briefing, you actually say the briefing. It's like David Muir in the evening, but you have to give it at 8 o'clock in the morning to the general staff and the colonels and so on at McGuire. And so I would go into the base about 4 o'clock in the morning to prepare my briefing. Well, this normally on my car, it had a base sticker and they just waved me through. Well, this particular morning, they stopped the car. I'm in uniform. They want to see my credentials, the fact that I'm, in fact, a military officer and so on. They check all that. And they said, the base is closed, but we'll let you in because I was going to brief the general. Well, as I drive in, out on the runways, I see all these lights, circular lights, and obviously a large number of vehicles out there. And when I come into the 21st Air Force and go into the command post, which, by the way, the command post was secret level. And I come in, and the fellow in charge of the command post is a top sergeant. And he comes up to me and he said that an alien had been shot at Fort Dix. And after he was shot by a Army security policeman, he ran towards McGuire. And that he somehow got through the fence between Fort Dix and McGuire, and that he died on the runway or near the runway at McGuire. And he's there now. And there's a C-141 aircraft coming in from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base to pick him up. And I said, an alien? You mean a Mexican or something? He says, no, an alien from outer space. And you're supposed to brief General Sadler at 8 o'clock about this.
Fascinating.
And I said, General Sadler doesn't have a good sense of humor. I don't know about this. One of the cases, I went back and started calling the wing, the C-141 wing. Wing is like 35 aircraft. Called their command post, and they knew about the alien. I called the air police command post, and they knew about the alien. And they said, yes, they're going to come in. He said, so many words, a team arrived from Washington that has taken over the whole situation with the alien, that we're not involved anymore. But Chief General Sadler. So I tried to prepare a briefing of what I knew, which wasn't much. And a colonel came up to me and said, don't brief it at the command post, brief him in his office. So that morning I go into his office after the briefing, and I'm going to brief him. And in the office is Lieutenant Colonel Frank Makowicz, who's the head of the security police. He says, you don't have to brief him, that he knows about it. So when I went in to brief General Sadler, I was carrying top secret information, which only he could read and not talk about. But that's kind of the story of. Oh, I also asked for permission to go out and see the alien, which they refused. I also went to the photo lab and asked for pictures that they had taken of the alien, and those were refused. So I never really got to see the alien, but I had the information from about 5 different sources at the time that he was there and was in fact an alien.
So that wasn't just a random shooting. They aren't just shooting aliens. They must have felt like it was trespassing or something. Why would they shoot the alien?
Well, he was in a what the Army considered was a secret area.
That's what I suspected. Yeah.
Uh,
They don't. You know, we have this concept of our airspace and they're invading our airspace, but I don't know if the aliens have that concept or not. And furthermore, if they've been here a lot longer than we have, is it our airspace? I think Gary Nolan makes a very powerful point on that score. He says, just whose airspace is it and who's invading who? Because we're late comers to the game, right? So
yeah, it's like us taking over the country from the Indians. You know, it really belonged to the Indians before, but the Indians even say there was another civilization there before them.
yeah, they do. Yeah, and you've got some information, some fun information. I'll just kind of Twitter with the audience here on your Filer's Files on some of the ancient stories of the aliens that are really fun, and this within just the last 2 months. So I was reading in it this morning. So that's quite fun. Did you ever meet Clifford Stone? Do you know who that is?
Yes.
Who was he, and how did you know him?
He was a Army. I guess he was a sergeant on like 3 stripes, not very high rank. You know, and I think he worked in some kind of personnel or something, but he did mostly paperwork.
Uh-huh.
But he claimed he had been to some of the crashed UFOs. I don't know if he really was, but I didn't like some of the things he was telling me about them. That didn't fit with what I had seen, but that doesn't mean that, you know, people don't realize they have all different kinds of crafts, cylinders, discs, orbs.
Yeah.
Cigar-shaped things, and
yeah, and you've got all those on your website in the Filer's Files. I'm telling you, the Filer's Files is a complete gold mine of information for for those of you guys who think, well, there's nothing new out there. The old is overwhelmingly powerful evidence. You don't need anything new. I don't know where that idea comes from. Well, the old's no good. It's outdated 1960 from 65. Baloney. It's still valid information.
that's true. People don't realize if UFO pictures have been taken
Hundreds,
since
thousands.
like 1860,
Yeah,
well before you can mess with them.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
there's paintings of them, and
In the ancient stuff. Yeah, I know.
Now,
Hey, Shadow 33 has a question that I'm kind of curious about because I haven't heard about this. I'm showing off my great fund of ignorance here, but please ask the Major what he knows about the Solar Warden secret space program. I had Stratcom confirm that it existed to me via email back in 2010. I don't know what that's all about.
yeah,
Do you?
I have articles on it.
Oh, nice. What is it?
Basically, it says that we back engineered. It happens that a few years ago, I was briefing at the MUFON conference about Mars, if you want to know about Mars. But after I briefed, a fellow came up to me and said that I'm an engineer and that I work for various aviation companies. And one of the things that I did was help send the astronauts to the moon, but I also worked on Solar Warden. And Solar Warden, according to him, is large ships. It sounds funny. The Air Force, or actually the Navy, discovered how, according to him, and his name is what the heck? Any case, I'll think of it in a minute. But he said that he was given the task while working for an aviation company of building something for Solar Warden. So that his first idea was to take a submarine like we have that goes under the water to go into space because it had a propulsion system they had developed to go into space. But he figured that the Solar Warden would be very nice, at least to start out with a submarine, and that was the first one that went up. And several of these ships that he designed were, in space and were actually flying around and going to the other planets and other solar systems, he claimed. And I have information
from the human invention. You're saying that
it's actually back engineering, whether we were given the, you might say, the anti-gravity.
right, but you're saying we created a craft that can go to other solar systems and other planets in space? Did I hear that right?
Yeah, that's what he claimed.
Okay.
So let me ask, Major.
I'm highly skeptical. I'm not trying to be obnoxious. That's wow.
Well, but you can, in fact, take your telescope or your binoculars and see the craft in space.
Oh.
Now, are they our craft or alien craft? I don't know. But we have people taking pictures of the craft frequently. And I have some of those pictures on my website as well.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of these pictures are kind of fuzzy, but that has to do with the atmosphere.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so odd. People scream against you if you produce fuzzy photos. So when you turn around and produce clear photos, they scream that it's CGI. I mean, what do you do?
Let me
it
ask,
seems to be if they're hovering and situation are just right, you can get a fairly clear picture.
Right.
But if they're using propulsion at all, it's difficult. Some way they mess up the atmosphere around the craft.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. The anti-gravity atmosphere. Go ahead, Robert.
Yeah. Let me ask Major on the submarines that we were experimenting with.
Could I take a break a minute while you guys are talking?
Sure, absolutely. You go right ahead. I'll just tell the audience right now what we're planning on doing, Robert and I, is we're going to do a further series with the major, but we also have some other information that Robert has become privy to that we are going to do some shows together, just he and I. And I have determined that the filer's files, which I promise we will link in here after the show is over. This automatically records the video, but we will provide a link for filer's files. But the thing that amazes me is he is not just giving us, now he has been doing this his whole life. I mean, he's not just giving us information from the 1950s and 60s and calling it good. He's got information from the 1950s all the way up to 2 weeks ago from right now. I just read it this morning. The man is astonishingly informed. There is boatloads that I never knew existed on the filer's files. I'm personally very excited to dip into this and share more information. And Robert's been finding some new information out that's happening in today's defense secretary and Congress and stuff that we're also going to do some information on. So, you know, the other day I was just lamenting, well, there's not a lot going on right now in the UFO community. And then Robert comes and informs me, you want to bet? So, I mean, dude, you're like a super sleuth. I love
it. Professor, so I'm studying the subset of these UFOs, the very small ones. You can call them ET drones. And every day I have over 5,000 videos. And every day I check my email. People all over the world are sending me their videos because I taught them how to do this. And it's quite easy. It's quite easy. So when you say there's no new information, oh my God, there's an avalanche. There's a tsunami of new videos coming in, a tsunami. So it's beyond amazing at this point. Yes. Yeah. And you may have heard in the background something going off like a radar detector. I have it pointed at the ocean. That is my dog whistle. I know when UFOs are flying by because they trigger the X and K band spectrum. And that was confirmed by the Pentagon 2 years ago on 4/19/23.
And Pentagon, you're saying that signaled that right now?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. How cool. On my live? You'll have to show us that video, man. That's fun. That's cool.
It's really darn cool.
The Navy is releasing information. I'm back, by the way.
Okay, yeah, sir.
Welcome back, Major. Now, what were we lying about? Or, I mean, what were we talking about?
Yes.
I can't remember.
Oh, gosh. The submarine, the solar warner.
Right.
So we back engineered and we made a prototype using a submarine. I would assume the Navy's not going to use one of their brand new submarines. We're going to use a very old submarine, maybe something captured in World War II from the Germans or Japan. I would assume that. Do you know? Did we practice on an old submarine? And if the experiment worked, then we would make a new submarine that could hover.
He never told me that part of it. He did say that, interestingly, he had two beautiful blonde women who were his secretaries. And that whenever he had a problem, in designing the craft and so on, they would suggest different things that he always used. And he suspected that they were aliens.
Okay, because these submarines that people have these photos of these cigar ships, especially hovering over water, when you turn them upside down, they look like a submarine. It's very clever. They're flying these solar Warner projects, but they're flying them upside down in case if they ever got photographed, you would never make the connection that it is a submarine, because the top of the photograph is flat and the bottom is all the ridges. So the next time you see one, turn the photo upside down. I have that. I've noticed that.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
That I don't think all of them were made that way, but at least the first one was. That's what he claimed.
In what year do you think we started doing that, the back engineering with solar Warner?
I don't know for certain, but I can find out probably. I would guess like in the 80s.
Okay.
I got a question from Jake B. Oh, sorry. Did I interrupt you? Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just trying to.
Has the Major ever come across a man named Captain Stephen L. Bennett in his career within the Air Force?
Have I?
Yeah. Do you know a Stephen L. Bennett?
No.
All right.
Okay. How about Colonel Stevens? He investigated the UFO Palladians in Switzerland in the 70s, 1970s. Colonel Stevens.
Yes, I knew Colonel Stevens.
Oh, you did?
I know. Well, he used to send me information, books and things. Some of his books, interestingly enough, claim that some of the aliens are angels.
I could see that. I could see how they would be interpreted as that. Yes.
There's another thing that if you go and say, well, maybe some are angels.
Yeah.
I had a friend in Ohio, near Fostoria, Ohio, George Ritter, who lived out on a farm. Now, he didn't have a farm himself, but the farm was like right behind his house. And after a while, he noticed that there was UFOs coming and diving into the farmer's field behind him. And then after a while, he noticed that some were coming out. And he started taking video of them and, pictures of them. And you go into the field and it looks like a normal field with crops growing. Everything looks perfect. But you have these pictures of the craft going in the field. Now, he's very curious about it, so he started listening to the police radio, the state police, Ohio State Police. And he's not very far from the Ohio Turnpike. And he noticed that if there's a big crash on the Ohio Turnpike, several UFOs would take off and fly towards the crash site where people had died. I have other people who, matter of fact, I got a call one day. That sounds funny, but public relations at McGuire used to call me when they got a sighting because they didn't want to investigate themselves, but I'm retired. They said, we've got a guy over in Riverside. He says that the UFOs land there behind the bowling alley all the time. Not only that, but they're messing up the asphalt under the driveway. when they take off, there's a lot of heat involved and they mess up the driveway.
How fascinating.
And
I
he says they want me to move to Pennsylvania next to a particular hospital because the UFOs check that hospital out all the time for people dying.
wow.
Now,
Really?
I don't know if you know, but really what the Bible says is that if you believe in Jesus and God,
Mhm.
When you die, your body will die, but your spirit will live,
Mhm.
and that your spirit will go to heaven, and you'll be redone up in heaven some way.
Right.
Well, I don't.
Is it
Anyways,
possible?
UFOs have a capability of picking up the spirit.
Yeah. Now that's interesting because I'm just reading in Clark's newest book, Space Indians. She also wrote the book Sky People. She interviews people down in Mexico and Mesoamerica and Guatemala who have UFO experiences. And some of the people in war that are killed, when the people who are living go to get their buddies and their bodies are missing, they see these aliens, and the aliens tell these people, well, we've taken them to a better world. They will live in peace, etc. And it is the tall blue people that are doing some of that, according to Clark and her witness experiences. And I've had people tell me, yes, those tall blue ones are the plebeians, kind of like in the Avatar movie.
Right. I've seen the movies, but I've never had any contact with the blues myself.
I haven't had any contact with any of them yet, but the day is young. I'm not, but the day is. But okay, I've got a question for you here, sir. Ask him if he believes Bill Tompkins. I don't even know who Bill Tompkins is. I probably should, so I'm giving myself away. But do you know who Bill Tompkins is and what's going on with him?
That was the name I was trying to remember.
Oh,
Yeah, I know him pretty well.
tell us about him.
Well, he's a person with an unusual abilities. You almost wonder if he's not an alien, but in any case, as a small boy, or at least eighth grade or whatever, he lived in Los Angeles, and apparently there's Navy ships there. And he would see a ship. This is like 1942 or whatever.
Uh-huh.
And he would make an exact copy of it. Out of matches and sticks and things like that.
Uh-huh.
And any ship he saw, he would make a copy. Well, they put these ships, as I understand it, in some kind of a place where other people could see it. And the Navy came in and they were upset that here there's the exact copies of the ships that the Japanese would really like to have.
Whoops.
Well, and he's like, I don't know exact age, but younger than most people go in the Navy. And he goes in the Navy. And he's adopted by an admiral And the admiral is in intelligence, and the admiral has a whole bunch of Navy intelligence officers in Japan and Germany. And they would come back from being spies in these countries and start telling them about the German UFOs.
Oh, wow.
And he would make copies of what they're saying. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What they're drawing or whatever.
Uh-huh.
And his job was to fly to various aviation companies all over the country and in some universities and provide them with the information. And
Wow.
he was not an officer, but they did not allow him to fly some of the planes.
Mhm.
After the war, he was let out of the Navy and went to work for Northrop. And Northrop was building flying wings.
Oh, they called them flying wings.
And
How-
he helped develop the flying wing at Northrop. And the interesting thing is the Air Force decided they didn't want the flying wing. They wanted an airplane that looked like a normal airplane. The B-47, actually.
Mm-hmm.
The B-36. And it's interesting that now we're building a flying wing.
Yeah, I was going to say, wait, we went back to the flying wing. Now, interesting. Yeah. Wow.
And he was like a top engineer, even though he didn't go to college, at all these companies, because he had the ability to, in his mind, to remember all these things. Like he could remember like all the parts of this submarines and all the parts of the aircraft and design them and decide what was better. And he knew a bunch of admirals. I know the admirals at various meetings thought a lot of him and talked to him just like we're talking. That he was in all kinds of key places for building of key vehicles, mostly for the Navy.
Yeah.
And he was friendly with all the German scientists that ran NASA. People don't realize that our country was not very good at building missiles or anything until the Germans got here and built them for us. And he was helping them.
Interesting. Yeah, Nate is saying you are like a national treasure. You really are. You have so much knowledge.
And
here's what Nate's saying. He said, "Oh my God, this guy just made me smile so big, brother."
Well, he used to call me all the time.
Yeah. I guess he's a central figure, isn't he? Yeah.
You know, one of his main concept was?
What?
Which I'm not saying that it's true, but he said that the aliens spread a kind of like a drug that makes people interested in football. And
are you serious? Football? Why not
football, baseball?
Why not telepathy?
Anything that's not scientific, you know.
How interesting. Oh, there you go. Quit watching the stupid television and start learning. Yeah, very interesting. So the aliens are the culprits distracting us.
Well, that's what he claims. He even had pictures of the UFOs spreading some kind of stuff.
Huh. How interesting. Okay, that's almost a good note to close out. We've been going about 2 hours, you guys.
Yeah, right.
Uh,
I'm sorry.
I hate to stop. This is so much fun for me. This is just so fascinating. Could we have you on the show again, Major? And let's do some more discussion with you.
Sure.
I love how my audience is asking questions. They know some things and they're having you interact with them. That's awesome.
I have hundreds of stories.
Good. We have hundreds of hours to share.
And I lived them. I don't make them up, you know.
No, I get it. I get it. Well, there's several people in the comments who were saying they're agreeing with you. They're saying, yeah, this guy knows his stuff. That's right. That's right. They know these people too. So this is terrific. I mean, thank you, Robert, for getting us involved with the Major. This is spectacular. Do you have any last things you'd like to say, Robert?
Just briefly, the Major talked about where they saw UFOs landing, but they never saw them. I would highly assume they were inside the Earth. They were landing in the Earth.
Oh,
transmedia.
Transmedia, yeah,
not a big issue. Maybe
well,
we could
for our technology.
Well, yeah, and we could maybe talk about this a little bit. I've had some confidential information about that, so I'm trying to repeat it. I don't want to burn any bridges, but they're landing, which is not a problem. They're landing inside the Earth, which is not a problem. But the way we are reacting is creating a problem. Oh, and so I wouldn't mind talking to you. I'll tell you, Carrie, and if you're comfortable. But it would get probably some people upset.
We'll talk and see.
We'll talk.
You remember I talked about George Ritter in Fosteria. Well, he wasn't far from Lake Erie, and under the ground all through northern Ohio are big caverns. Matter of fact, you can go in some of them, and they said, we figured that the aliens had the base in one of the caverns. And then I had a postman from Maine who called me and he said, this may sound funny, but I see UFOs fly into this tall hill or little mountain almost every day. And some are coming out, and it's right on the border between Canada and Maine. And other people will say, different mountains or different places where they see them go in and go out. One place, interestingly enough, was near Trenton in the Delaware River, that they were going in and out of the Delaware River. And
wow, interesting.
Other places, various places, if you're in the Navy or Coast Guard, there's certain places you can't go based on the maps. The maps say, don't go in this area or whatever. Well, in that area would be popular for UFOs going in and out of the water.
And then Skeet's comment comes right into play here. Yes, many have seen them going into the earth and into the mountains. Even on Skinwalker Ranch, they show it. And I've seen videos on that. So we're getting all kinds of interesting parallels and tie-ins here, you guys. Fascinating.
But they're here. I've seen them close up. I know they're here. Been inside one.
The day is coming where I'll be able to say the same thing if I'm worthy. Oh, hey, Shadows 33. Let's give one more comment.
Well, sometimes they're looking for
friends. This is such a good show, but 1.6 gigahertz frequency. We talked about this earlier. Can attract UAPs. That's the space to Earth frequency used for comms. Major may know about that.
The space what?
The major used for comms, communications. The space to earth frequency for communication is the 1.6 gigahertz. He said.
I heard stories. I had some students of mine who worked at in communications and particular places that said that they had information that they could see or radar or some form of tracking followed the UFOs leaving the Earth's atmosphere roughly 6 or 7 a week and six or 7 a week coming into our atmosphere.
Yeah.
And a lot of those were over the poles.
Yeah. And they're talking about that a little bit more now too. Yeah, 1.6 gigahertz is what the Barber team uses as the dog whistle. Shadow's telling us. And I've read that and heard that elsewhere. Yeah.
Professor, briefly. So this relatively new technology, the dog whistle, the 1.6, I believe it's all real. It works. But I think we just need to understand the concept of what we're actually describing. So when we say 1.6 frequency, we are talking about creating technologies, creating paradigms that are utilized as bait. How do you bait UAPs? That's what we're doing.
Yeah, essentially, yes.
How do you bait UAPs? So some of the bait I use is Earth drones, regular drones. They will bait UFOs highly effective. I have those videos. And I'll share them with you later. So it's all about bait rather than, because a dog whistle is bait. The whistle itself will bait a dog.
Sure.
So how do you bait UAPs? And it's easier than you think. It's extremely easier. I've researched this 14,000 hours, but we're off to a really good start. And I think a lot of data is going to come in quickly, and it's exciting times.
Yeah, we're in exciting times. This is a lot of fun for me to get to know you fabulous people and my audience. And I mean, Robert and I talk frequently on the phone, and he gets excited and shares something with me when he finds it out, and I get excited and ask him questions. And now we're both in communication with the major, and we're just
Robert sees UFOs regularly.
Yeah, right. This is fun. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
It's quite an opening up for me. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm small-minded anyway, but I've had my mind blown several times in the last many months with this UFO concept, and I am still trying to lean to the evidence, and yet part of the evidence now has truly become what classical science used to call, or still does, woo-woo. And that is difficult for me. I'm just saying out loud, but I'm trying to remain flexible and assessing the evidence. And it's intriguing. It's quite a journey we're all on. I love it. So go ahead.
One thing the aliens say is that our science isn't very good.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. And Heiser Soze says, check out custodial files. That's you, Robert.
Somebody will come up with a theory 200 years ago, and they're still saying that's true, and they know it's not true.
Yeah. Yep. Well, we are gonna call it good. Thank you again so much for your time, you guys, both of you, Robert and the Major. We will be coming back on soon. We're not going to wait for a month or so. We want to get as much, want to squeeze the Major dry of all his fantastic stories and experiences. So,
what's really important, everyone, is that we document history
Yep.
The Major being here is a blessing, and there's not too many that can take his place.
No, they're not. So we're grateful.
So
We're grateful for your health, Major. So don't be eating potato chips secretly on us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We want you to eat carrots.
My
Right.
uniform fits awfully tight.
I
Yeah.
appreciate y'all. I appreciate my audience. Thank you for all your participation. Like, share, and subscribe, and tell people that we're doing this series on the Major and come and watch this, because this is not just regular information. This is
No.
eyewitness history to a remarkable phenomena. Whether you believe it or not is irrelevant at this point. This is history. So
Right.
thank you again so much. We're going to close out. Go have a good weekend for the rest of the weekend, and we'll catch up to you guys soon.
Thank you. Thank you.